Now on Mississippi Insight.
In this instance, what people saw on January 6th with their own eyes really happened. It was an embarrassment to this country.
We'll talk with Mississippi Congressman Bennie Thompson about the new normal in Washington, Democratic objectives in 2025, and President-elect Trump's suggestion that Thompson be jailed.
It is a matter of national security. That is what we're talking about here.
Mississippi Ag Commissioner says farmers need help immediately and a lot of it. But congressional spending negotiations put such aid in peril. That's all ahead this week on Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown on broadcast and podcast. Thank you for joining us for this December 21st edition of Insight. Mississippi's sole Democrat in Congress is getting ready for another 2 years of opposition politics in Washington. Bennie Thompson is a veteran legislator and chairman of the January 6th committee in the House. That distinction has earned him the ire of Donald Trump and his allies as they prepare for potential retribution campaign against their political opponents. We spoke with the 2nd District Congressman Tuesday afternoon. Well, Congressman, President-elect Trump recently suggested that you and other members of the January 6th committee should go to jail. Do you take such statements seriously, and what impact do you believe they have on the political climate?
Well, obviously, I take the president-elect at his word. Let me be clear, the January 6th only did our job. We were tasked with the responsibility of looking at the facts and circumstances that made January 6th happen. We did it. We produced a report. We interviewed witnesses from all over the country who had contributions to make. But on the other side, we invited anyone with opposing opinions to please come. So President disagrees with it. That's his opinion, but that doesn't make it wrong. He can accuse us of whatever, but we stand by our report. They have looked at it, the Republicans here in the House, for the last 2 years, and they found nothing contrary to what we produced in that report. So we stand by it.
Any concern that this next couple of years could be difficult for you, attacks from the president?
Well, I stand for what's right. I've been an elected official for a good time, and what we try to do is call it in the best interest of the communities and people we represent. And in this instance, what people saw on January 6th with their own eyes really happened. It was an embarrassment to this country. It was not who we are as a nation, and we should never, ever want it to happen again. I'm convinced that our report put that in that perspective. Now, I'm not looking for President-elect Trump to try to rewrite history. It was an utter embarrassment that we had law enforcement people hurt trying to defend the United States Capitol because a sitting president sicked them on the United States Capitol. I was in the Capitol, Byron, at that day, and so I saw firsthand what occurred. It is not who we are as a people, and no one should ever want that to happen again.
Before the election, one of your field's office staffers in Natchez resigned after some inflammatory comments made about the attempted assassination of the former president. What measures are you now implementing to promote respectful discourse and prevent such incidents in the future?
Well, social media is a real challenge for us all over the country. It's unfortunate that my staffer did that, but ultimately she's no longer employed with me. I won't tolerate it. Nor would, I hope, anyone else. So it speaks for itself. Now, I can't say that for former President Trump and what he said about people, but you make decisions. My staffer made an impulsive decision at the time. She was a good staffer, but when you make those kind of choices, obviously you put yourself in a position where you lose your employment, and that's what happened.
In light of recent threats and the attempted assassination of the former president, what steps do you believe should be taken to enhance the security of political officials and ensure the safety of our democratic institutions?
Well, there's no question. Any person who runs for public office should be protected. When I served on the January 6th committee, I had a protective detail because of the threats that came in. Presidents, by law, have the best protection possible. I encourage that on whether you're a Democrat or Republican. We are a nation of laws. If we disagree, go to the ballot box and vote me out. But you don't have to try to assassinate me or hurt me. That's not who we are. So I have gone to Butler, Pennsylvania to see the site of the attempted assassination. We've held hearings on our committee. I've seen the report, and ultimately we have to ramp up our dignitary protection for the president, vice president, and every other person in senior position of responsibility. We can't allow people who disagree with people to take the law into their own hands.
Here is a question from one of our viewers. It says, you defended President Biden pardoning his son, saying that he would do the same thing for your son. But previously you said no one is above the law, even the President of the United States. While investigating former President Trump, how do you reconcile those views?
Well, a president has the pardoning power. That's the law. So if he decides to pardon his son, the law gives him that authority. So that's not that he's above the law. The law gives the pardoning power to the president. But I say just like President-elect Trump pardoned his son-in-law's father and now has appointed him ambassador to France, things happen. But he has the authority as president to do that. So no one, again, is above the law. But it's inherent in the power of the presidency to give pardons. So, I mean, that's the law.
What are your primary objectives coming up for this term?
Well, to be as forceful in producing democratic laws. I'm going to oppose that Project 2025 that the president, when he was running, said he didn't know anything about it. But the primary author of it, he's appointed him to be over the Office of Management and Budget. I'm going to fight for Social Security. I'm going to oppose any cuts in veterans programs. I want to make sure that Medicare and Medicaid is held harmless in any potential cut. And I want to make sure that our children have the best opportunity in the world to be the best that they can be. If that means that make Pell Grants available for them to go to school and get that education, I'll support it. But in the interim, I want to make sure that we retain that world leadership status that we've enjoyed for so long. That world leadership status is that people look up to us as a country, and we have to make sure that we do that.
With such slim margins, both the House and the Senate, how much of President-elect Trump's agenda do you think will get through in the next couple of years?
Well, we're in the process right now, trying to get a continuing resolution passed so that government can stay open past the 20th of December. Speaker Johnson can't get that without Democratic votes. So what he's going to have to do is sit down with Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries and work out a compromise. You know, the ability to be number one in the world is the ability to work out your differences. If those differences are worked out, government won't shut down and we'll continue. But there's nothing in stone. I'm concerned that our president-elect talks about retribution. You've won, Mr. President. Why are you promoting retribution on those people who oppose you from a different party? In the Bible, it says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Just because you're president, you're not the Lord. And I would admonish him to set a high standard because you are the principal elected official in the United States, but you're a world leader now. So you have to act the part. And I encourage him to do that. We can still differ, but in order to stay number one, at some point we have to be unified.
Well, Congress faces that Friday deadline on that stopgap funding measure. Are you confident that something will get worked out? Well,
I'm hoping. You know, we have something called the 72-hour rule that before we can actually vote on it, it has to sit on the table. We're getting close to that 72-hour rule, and ultimately we'll have to pass a piece of legislation pushing it aside. I'm for keeping government open. I want to make sure that everything that got us to be number one continues to function, and that's our government. I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing. The last briefing we got say they're coming close together. There's an issue around agriculture that we're trying to get over, and hopefully if we get that behind us, we'll have agreement. So this is how you be number one as a government. You put the differences on the table and you work them out. I'm optimistic that by December 20th, we won't have a government shutdown and those differences will be worked out.
And speaking of agriculture, Ag Commissioner Andy Gipson is pleading with Congress to deliver additional aid for farmers, and he says that they are facing deep financial hardships. Do you agree with the commissioner, and what's your stand on increased relief for the farming sector?
Well, you know, we didn't pass a farm bill, and now we're operating on what's called a continuing resolution. Agriculture is key to my district, is key to our state. Without government support for all the agricultural programs, not just with farmers, but the nutrition program, the WIC program, all those programs are looped into one. So if we can get agreement on all of the programs that are funded in the Farm Bill, I think we'll have support. You'll probably end up with as many Democrats supporting it as Republicans. The problem right now is Speaker Johnson can't get enough Republicans to support a farm bill to get help for the farmers.
And why is that? Why aren't more Republicans on board?
Well, they're saying that it costs too much to support a farm bill and that it's a budget buster. And so we have some people on the Republican side who don't want to help anybody. And so what we've done on the Democratic side, say we understand the farmer dilemma. It's a dilemma, but there's a dilemma on the nutrition side. Let's work it out. Since I've been here, we've had several farm bills. It's always been the Democrats who bailed the farmers out on every farm bill that we've ever had to come before me in my 32 years here in the House of Representatives.
Energy Mississippi has initiated the construction of the Delta Blues Advanced Power Station in Greenville. It's a $1.2 billion project. How do you envision this development impacting the state's economy and energy landscape?
Well, look, it's something that is a life shot for the Mid-Delta. That means that if someone wants to put a power generation consumption entity in the Mississippi Delta, they can now have it with that new generation facility, just like what we have with Amazon in Madison County. If a similar type facility wanted to come to the Mississippi Delta, we would now have a generation facility to accommodate them. But what we had to do with Amazon, we had to plus up some of Entergy's capacity in the Madison County area for that to happen. So now, with that new power generation facility, state of the art, I'm excited. That means that we won't be turned down for economic development because we don't have the power to support it.
Is Mississippi do you see Mississippi in the future looking at attracting a lot more industry than we've had in the past?
Well, there's no question about it. We have available labor supply. We have available land. We have elected officials who are open to just about anything that wants to come if it creates a job, but it's competitive. So, you know, industry has a good opportunity because they say, here, we want to create these jobs, make us your best offer. And I think Mississippi can compete now. We kept Milwaukee Tools in the 2nd District because the good people of Grenada County competed and they won. But all of this is about competition and attracting the best investment for those companies. So now we have the boards of supervisors, the cities, the members of the legislature all on the same page, promoting economic development. So it's no longer one section of the state competing against another. We're all in this together. And one of the reasons we were successful in Madison County, not just for the Amazon, but for when Nissan and other areas came, we stopped fighting each other and combined our resources, and we've been successful. I see that being the template for future economic development, not just in the 2nd District, but for the entire state of Mississippi.
You know, the governor and other lawmakers want to cut the state income tax and say that will help us be more competitive. Do you agree with cutting the state income tax?
Well, you know, I leave that to them, but let me give you the other side of the coin. Right now, for every dollar that Mississippi sends to Washington, they get $3 back. So we are not self-supported as a state. And if it were not for the federal government, we'd be in real trouble. So before you start cutting taxes, you need to make sure that you're taking full advantage of what's coming from the federal government. I've been the only person in our House delegation to support infrastructure and transportation program, all the bridges that are being built, all the highways that are being built. I'm the only person in our House delegation who voted for it. All of the monies that's going into broadband and other infrastructure development so that our children can learn and compete with children all around the world. Again, I'm the only person who said our children need to have access to that and we need to spend the money. So we sent the money from Washington to Mississippi so that our children don't have to go to McDonald's to get their homework because McDonald's has Wi-Fi and they don't have Wi-Fi available at their homes. So I'm comfortable with that kind of investment. I have to look at why we're trying to cut state income tax, but our hospitals, I'll look at healthcare. We need some form of support for our hospitals. There are a number of hospitals in my district, pardon the pun, that are on life support. They can't make it without federal support. The local tax base won't support it. But we've turned down in the last 10 years over $15 billion from the Medicaid expansion that could have gone into those communities to prop up the hospitals. And so those individuals who oppose it, for the most part, they don't live in those communities. They have the benefit of choice in terms of going to whatever health facility they need to. But if you're in Greenwood, Clarksdale, Greenville, those other communities, you don't have many choices. And God forbid, people get sick, people have accidents. But if I have to go 100 miles to a level 2 trauma center, I'm in serious trouble. And so what we have to do is take some of those monies that our governor and others have refused to take and invest it in those communities so that when people get sick or hurt, there's a local health facility somewhere near where they live that can accommodate whatever that health challenge is. And right now, we're just missing that opportunity, and that's so unfortunate.
Congressman Bennie Thompson, we thank you for your time and for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, and we'll be right back. Andy Gipson has been a strong cheerleader for Mississippi's farmers and ranchers. So when he warns that they are facing some of their worst economic hardships in decades, people listen. The state Agriculture and Commerce Commissioner says Congress needs to help farmers. A stopgap spending deal brokered by House Speaker Mike Johnson would have given farmers some $31 billion in disaster relief and economic assistance. But by late in the week, the prospects for that deal appeared to be slim to none, after vocal opposition from budget hawks and the president-elect himself. 12 News' Tia McKenzie spoke Monday with Commissioner Gipson, who laid out the stakes for American agribusiness.
Well, there are several factors behind this economic crisis that farmers are facing. One of them everyone can relate to, and that is inflation, the high price of everything these days. And people forget that when those prices are high in the grocery store, those prices are not being passed on to the farmers. Farmers are actually having to pay the same prices, the inflationary prices. The cost of raising the crop has gone up 30% just since last year, for example. So that's a huge increase in inflation that farmers have faced with no one to pass that on to. When they show up with their soybeans at the market, it is what it is. And at the same time, prices have gone sky high for inputs to farm. The price of the product, soybeans, cotton, corn, that's all gone down due to a variety of factors. One of them being we've had a lot of production, but also we're in an ag trade deficit right now. So those products are not being sold. Soybeans are not being sold in markets internationally like they should be. And the last 2 years, we've seen the very worst ag trade deficits that we have ever seen in history. So these are long-standing problems that have come to a head in the same year in 2024. High inflation, the cost of doing business going sky high, and the prices for product going down. China, for example, which used to be our largest purchaser of all ag products, they've started doing business with other nations. They formed alliances with Brazil and other nations around the world. And let's face it, we're in something like a Cold War with China. I mean, we are in a standoff, it seems, with China as we look to international relations. So that has had an effect as well. And I think that what we're seeing at this particular point in time is the convergence of a lot of factors that have come at the worst possible time for our farmers. And when I look at it as a whole, your row crop farmers are the ones who are suffering the worst right now. And if something is not done, if a farm bill is not passed, if this farm aid package is not approved in Congress, there will be hundreds of thousands of farmers who will make the decision that they cannot continue farming anymore, that they'll be forced out of business. They will not perhaps be able to get a bank loan to get another crop in the ground. I mean, that's the reality that we're facing here. So at this point, it is a matter of the survival of row crop farmers and all farmers nationwide that have been affected. A third factor that I should mention is disaster. We've had drought. I showed a map at the Mississippi Economic Council of the historic drought nationwide that we've faced. And so in a lot of places in Mississippi, we're blessed to have good irrigation, and we thank God for that, abundant water resources. Not every place is blessed with that. Even in Mississippi, there's dry land that just didn't produce this year because of the drought. So natural disasters such as drought, also the hurricanes that have come through, and affected so many people around the country. This is affecting Mississippi seriously, this whole issue. And it is a matter of survival of our farmers, but it's also a nationwide issue. It is about the future of American agriculture. And so I think those are the three factors that are really putting the squeeze on farmers nationwide.
And Commissioner, you called on Congress to move quickly to approve additional aid for farmers, and that goes beyond the existing farm bill, which is expected to be extended for another year. How do you convince skeptical deficit hawks and other critics of government spending that more is needed?
Well, I think food security is national security. In fact, matter of fact, I don't think it, I know it. It's one of my slogans around here. Food security is national security. This is a threat, not just to the farmers, but to our nation as a whole. A nation that cannot feed itself cannot survive. And America has proven time and time again that healthy agriculture policy makes us stronger in international circles, our ability to feed ourselves, and we also help feed people all around the world. But you show me a nation that cannot feed itself, and I'll show you the weakest nation in the world. And we do not ever want to get in that situation. So it is a matter of national security. That is what we're talking about here. In the last 2 years, 141,000 farms have ceased operations due to these economic hardships. If something is not done, we will probably see in excess of 300,000 or more farms that will go out of business. And when you translate that into the real world, of not having the food production that we are accustomed to having, that national security backbone that is our food security, then that would put America in a much more vulnerable situation internationally, and we can't allow that to happen. We must be strong as a nation. We must do what we have to do to keep our farmers going. And for that reason, I'm calling on Congress to act, and I am, anything can happen. Anything cannot happen in Congress. But I did talk with Washington this morning, and it sounds like things may be coming back together in a positive direction, but I'm not holding my breath. They have until Friday to pass something. We're down to the wire here for this end of the year wrap-up of the congressional session.
And that kind of leads into the next question. Of course, House Speaker Mike Johnson had been expected to deliver details on that stopgap funding bill on Sunday. He did not, because negotiators are still working on that deal. Do you have faith that Republicans in Congress will forge a deal to help farmers by this Friday's deadline?
I do have faith. I'm a man of great faith, and I believe sometimes in the face of difficult circumstances, I still believe. And in this situation, I do believe. I believe that they understand the issue, they understand the risk to our national security, the risk to farmers, the risk to the economy. I mean, if you had row crop farmers go out of business in Mississippi, think of every small rural town that will not have that farmer who's buying fuel, who's buying groceries, who's buying inputs at the farm store and employing people. It's going to have a ripple effect, a negative effect to the economy if something's not done. So knowing all that and talking to Washington this morning, it is sounding as if a deal is on the horizon. But again, nothing's final till it's done. So we're going to wait and see and continue to say it's urgent that Congress get this done. And so Speaker Johnson in the House, I know, is working on it. And I want to thank all of our congressional delegation that's there going to bat for the farmers of Mississippi.
And do you believe that President-elect Trump should step up and apply pressure to congressional negotiators to get more done?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think President Trump understands this. He put in a lot of policies during his first term that were beneficial to farmers. We're going to see those come into pass, I know, starting in 25, but right now, all we have is today, and right now, only Congress has the authority to do what needs to be done here.
And the President-elect says that he will raise tariffs to some of our biggest trading partners, including 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico, which is, of course, Mississippi's two biggest markets for exports. What happens to farmers in Mississippi if the U.S. levies these tariffs and our trading partners rely on this?
Well, I think President Trump has used these tariffs as a negotiating tactic since he first was sworn into office back in 2017. And I think he's doing the same thing now. As a matter of fact, he used those tactics to negotiate the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement that went into effect back in 2020. I think it was 2020. Double check my year on that, but it's coming up for negotiation again in 2026. So I think it's a negotiating tactic, it's a tool. I do believe that this is an opportunity for a whole reset on the issue of tariffs. Now that we know that China is doing what it's doing and acquiring grain in other markets, I think we have to bring all tools to the table to negotiate the best deal for our farmers. And frankly, the survival of American agriculture is going to depend on a successful renegotiation of international trade for the benefit of our farmers, not only here in Mississippi, but nationwide.
And considering immigration reforms and border security, large parts of our state agriculture sector depend on migrant labor. Should our farmers prepare for labor shortages in the event of a federal crackdown on mass deportation?
Well, we already have a labor shortage. The farmers already have one. As a matter of fact, it's been very difficult to get the H-2A workers approved to come in here. We've had difficulties with the U.S. Department of Labor for the past 4 years, making it harder and harder to hire legal migrant workers. So there are people who are in the pipeline who want to come work in the legal H-2A program, and that's who our farmers want to hire and want to use. And so I don't think that the mass deportation you referenced is going to impact that aspect of it. Our farmers have to comply with the law anyway. They have to hire legal workers, and they actually have to provide them requisite housing and payments, and have to pay them a fair wage under federal law. So there's lots of opportunities for work. Our farmers' biggest problem is they can't get the workers there right now to do the job that needs to be done. And again, I think in a new administration, I believe there'll be an opportunity to reset the tone of the Department of Labor and OSHA and all those burdensome federal regulations that have made it hard for farmers to get workers in. But I've talked to many farmers who say they have people lined up who will come to work next week, but they cannot get through the legal process of coming here to work as a seasonal worker, H-2A worker. That's where we need to focus our efforts. And people who are not here legally, well, they need to go home, and they need to come back legally if they want to come. That's something that I agree with President Trump about. There's plenty of workers who want to work the legal process, and that's who we want to welcome to get the job done, and American workers too. There are ample opportunities for workers to have jobs on farms across America.
Anything else you may want to add, Commissioner?
I'm good. Thank you, and thank you for covering this. And just say to the people, thank you for supporting the farmers. We all talk about how we want to support the farmers. This is a real way we can actually do it, and I want to thank our Congress in advance for getting this done for American agriculture and for food security.
That's Commissioner Andy Gipson. Congress was finally able to pass a stopgap funding measure by Friday's deadline. It includes all of the original $31 billion pledged to farmers' relief. We're back in a moment. If you have comments or questions about today's show or a suggestion for an interview or segment, just drop us a line. Email our producers. The address is news@WJTV.com. Big thanks to Congressman Bennie Thompson and Commissioner Andy Gipson for joining us this week. Watch or listen to our full interview segments online and on demand via YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms. We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.